Hey, what's up, everybody? Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of our very own fee-only certified financial planners. Please note this podcast is intended for educational purposes and should not be considered financial or investment advice, as we do not know all the variables to one's personal situation when answering a question. Before we jump into today's question, a shout out to our extraordinary YFP financial planning team that makes this segment possible. Your Financial Pharmacist offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to pay off your student loans, make the right investment decisions, or simply build a solid financial plan, we'll help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. Okay, this week's question comes from Susanna in the YFP Facebook group. Susanna asks, when purchasing our first home, we obtained a piggyback loan along with our main mortgage. Anyone know of ways other than paying it off fully to get rid of it? I just don't like having two separate loans tied to the mortgage and two different payments. Didn't know if home refinancing in the future would make a difference or any other ideas. Tim Baker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's actually been a while since I've heard of piggyback. I typically refer to these as 80-10-10 loans. So a piggyback is a second mortgage that either comes in the form of like a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, that is made at the same time as you basically take out your original mortgage. So the 80-10-10, that gets this name because typically the first mortgage covers 80% of the home price. If you're buying $1 million home, the first mortgage would be $800,000. The second mortgage covers 10%, so another $100,000, and then the remaining 10% is covered by your down payment. Now, the thing that kind of stinks about these loans is you're typically paying two sets of closing costs, for each loan because they're typically separate instruments. Why would anybody do that? The purpose is to allow borrowers with low down payment savings to borrow additional money in order to qualify for their main mortgage without paying PMI, and then also to potentially pay lower rates, although the second mortgage will have higher interest rates, or to avoid a jumbo loan. So typically conventional mortgages are capped at a certain amount. Once you get above that, there's a jumbo loan, which is typically considered riskier, higher loans amount, higher interest. So the question is like, how do I get rid of these two different payments? It's tough. One is unfortunately, Susanna, could be to, pay it off, right? So not necessarily anything dynamic, is to kind of focus all your efforts and pay that one off. Again, if it is 10%, maybe it's not as much, obviously, as some other debts that you might have or goals that you might have. You could refinance, the loan. Now, the problem with refinance is that you typically are resetting the clock. You're typically paying more closing costs. And if you're not even sure if you're going to be there for a certain amount of years, like it might not make sense to do that. Depending on what your interest rate is, it might not make sense to do that either. The other big thing with piggyback loans is that they can be a little bit harder to refinance. As long as you can prove that you use that second mortgage to purchase your home or that HELOC to use for the home, this will typically not count as a cash out refinance, and you can do it. But you also need to make sure that you have enough equity in your home to pay off any outstanding balance on the second mortgage when you refinance. So these are typically loans that, again, it's really important to understand what you're getting into before you actually sign on the dotted lines. To unwind them, you're typically looking at taking on a brand new mortgage, i.e. in the refinance world, or you're just being super diligent about throwing as much extra cash out there to kind of go from that two payments to one. So there unfortunately isn't really any creative or any magic solution. Refinance is on the table, and where rates are right now, you could potentially, look to do that depending on the situation. But other than refinance, other than, being really strict and laser focused on paying that down, those are typically the two broad, looks or broad strategies to look at.
Great stuff, Tim. And Susanna, thank you again for submitting your question, a topic we have not yet discussed on the podcast. So we appreciate the submission. As a small thank you, we're going to be sending Susanna a super comfy YFP t-shirt. And we'd like to hear from you, whether you have a question through the YFP Facebook group. You can also send us a question at yourfinancialpharmacist.com/AskYFP, or you can send us an email at info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com. Have a great rest of your week.